Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor. Through the magic of video, time passes. I had a couple projects come in, so this sort of got pushed to the side. So now it's time to work on developing the mother. Now, this is a long piece. This niche measures 4 feet tall overall. The figures, around 310, 3'8", something like that. And plaster is not that strong in terms of torsion or length. Now, there's different plasters. There's dental stone, there's hydrocal, there's products that are much stronger PSI, but if you pour them long and thin, they still snap. When we're doing smaller mothers, let me go back and explain. A mother is, we're going to pour plaster over this rubber, silicone rubber, plain from the hardware store, with some keys in here to register it in the mother. And then all the draft has been filled. We're going to pour a plaster over this, and that plaster is going to support this and hold this shape in place so we can do an accurate cast or positive from this mold. If the mother breaks, if it doesn't support, if your mother doesn't support you, you're not going to go very far. Okay, that's kind of a message here. That's the way we look at it in this work. So we have to have a mother that's nice and strong. Now, you can put fiber in it. A lot of times the old ways would be to use a real open burlap type mesh, burlap grain sacks or bags of some type, coffee bags. And that works to a point, but when you're doing a long piece of plaster that's relatively thin, even if it's 4 inches thick, if it's very long and it's not even, it's still going to tend to snap over the length. It'll break, and at that point, all the fiber does is keeps it from falling into 2 pieces. And so you got a floppy mother, which is better than no mother, but it still isn't ideal. So we're going to take a cue from the waste mold procedures that we did in a previous video series, and we're going to embed some reinforcement in the mother. Now, this is a little elaborate. But it's something that will help a lot. This is just plain 1x lumber. This 1x lumber was some of the nice crooked throwaway stuff at the local box store that they discount like 25 or 75%. And so you pick that up and you use it for odd projects around the studio. You can use it to crate with, you can use it to develop armatures with, and save a few dollars. And then you've got it on hand, so you don't have to stop what you're doing, which is a bigger benefit. Now, this will extend the full length of the model. This will be well embedded in the plaster. The plaster will, these are just holes I cut with like a 1-inch spade bit. And this isn't real technical, but those will go through. I'll probably put some twine or something between them just to add a little more support. But as this dries and dries through these keys, we'll put a little bit, probably won't put that much over it. Set this on here and see how it. This will set on the rubber about like this. Now, I'll probably block it up here on the end because we've got to capture a little bit of this plinth, so I'll probably put a 1/2-inch piece of plywood across the bottom here, and maybe another same one across the top, so that it's raised up just a little bit and not setting on that. But this all goes down and almost touches in many places, and that's good because that means I can get the plaster as deep as I need it to be, and it should go through these keys. Should be able to run it up to the heights up here. It's going to take a lot of plaster. We're going to use hydrocal. It's going to be heavy, and this is going to help both with keeping the mother stable, but one of the other big benefits of doing this when you pour an odd-shaped mound of plaster and develop it over a rubber mold, when you cast it or charge it, after you pull the clay out, you've got to stabilize it in order to use it, and you wedge it and you put things under it to hold it stable. After I laid these two 1-bys in here, I did these ends, and these were long. I just cut these ends long, and then I could just take whatever piece was left on it and just knock it off with a handsaw and make them flush. So the benefit now is that when I take this out, I've got this whole thing, and when this is charged and this has got plaster in it, and I pull this out and evacuate it, can lay it flat on its back to charge it and cast it, and I've got a very stable surface to work with. And that, it's one of those things that just helps speed up the process and helps do a little bit better job. So we'll get to work, start mixing some plaster. Probably do just the mother on this video, so the video's not too long, and then we'll evacuate the clay and charge the positive. So time to start. As I'm setting up, we've talked a little bit about doing your prep, getting everything ready. When you do a large pour like this, where arguably this plaster for the mother, there's going to be more plaster poured for the mother probably than for the actual positive, because the positive doesn't have to be several inches thick to be strong. It just has to be thin and consistent so it's durable. I'm going to put probably a wooden armature inside of it to help stabilize it. So you've got to get everything cleaned up. Now, I wanted to mention this. These little pieces, okay, they're scrap. They go in the scrap bucket. They don't go in the trash. Got to do a 5'6" angel right here. Do this model, and for a couple of reasons, I'm going to do a full-size angel, 5'6", and I'll point it 1-to-1 instead of doing approximately maybe 3 foot tall and enlarging it. Just because people nowadays are so unfamiliar with the enlargement process, that if I tell patrons that I doubled this, I made this twice as big, they just kind of go, oh really? They don't understand that I actually carved something life size. If they stand in front of a life size model, it's a whole different impact. So it'll be high relief, 8 inches in relief, but it'll be big. So I'll have opportunities to use lots of pieces to block up the armature. So these are something I've already paid for, so we'll use them. But in the process of getting all my prep ready, I've got to make sure I've got multiple buckets cleaned and washed and ready to go. I'll have 3 buckets of water that I'll make sure I've washed the buckets. I've also washed my plaster buckets. I'll fill my squirt bottle just to have a handy thing of water, plus I got my spray bottle in there just to be able to have water. This water needs to be as cold as possible. Now you can put ice in it. I'm not going to ice it. I'll be fine without ice for this project. It'll slow your plaster down, and if the warmer the water is, the faster the plaster will run. We want this to be set up really well because I'm going to have multiple batches mixed, and I've got to overlap them well enough that they knit or adhere to each other quick enough that they slip well. So I've got to have plaster ready in succession to pour and pour. I've got one bag out, another bag just in the barrel waiting. And we started off with the watering can. Now there's a reason, multiple reasons, I've got a clay floor in my studio here in South Carolina. It's more delicate with the stones. If you're turning a stone, you get something on the ground, it's not going to pop a corner off as quickly as it will on a concrete floor. If a stone happens to slip or get loose, it may just crush my foot instead of cutting it off. But it also allows me the opportunity to take and use water that I use cleaning up buckets to water the floor. This does two things. Well, three things actually. It compacts the floor a little bit, makes it a little more comfortable to walk on. It'll cut down on your dust, but it also helps cool the studio, and it can be pretty dramatic when it's really hot if the humidity's not overwhelming. And so cooling the studio down a little bit will help with the plaster. So we'll go keep getting a few more things out, and it's going to be hard to show you the mixing of the plaster, but I'll stop in and do video as we apply it because I'm working alone, so I've got to work pretty fast. Once you get to this point, it's better if you're going to do plaster, you need to do some projects that are small. If you do a big one like this to start, I guarantee it's going to kick your butt and you're going to spend a lot of money on a wasted product. So do some small jobs, and then when you know what your abilities are, you'll be able to fly enough batches of plaster, because I'll probably have to mix at least 3 or 4 batches in order to do this. So I've got to have everything ready to go to mix plaster. I mean, have it measured out, to mix it, and then to clean buckets in between producing the next one. That's why I've got 2 buckets, so I can run one, mix the next one while that one's cleaning, and then vice versa, just keep going. Because I got to offset the runs by about 50%, so I've got time to work the plaster and actually use it. So hang in there. We'll put some more video on in a second. Got everything pretty well set up. Going to use my handy lift here just as a table, just because that's all it needs to be. Buckets are set up. I'll have 2 buckets where I know my water amount. I've got my cheat sheet right over here on the side that I keep so I can remember what I like and what I don't. And so I've got these set up. I've got extra water ready to go. My Big Dipper. Love my Big Dipper. It just works so well. And extra clean water. I've got my pair of tubs here that I'll use to divide out some plaster to start with. Plaster ready to go. Went ahead and laced this just with some light baling twine, just some jute utility twine. And the goal is to not deform any of the rubber or to have the wood contact any of the silicone. So it's just standing off all the way around. There's a couple places where the twine is very close. There's no problem. But all this will do is this will help stabilize it. My goal is to go probably at least as deep as these holes. Try to get a good key through there on all these holes, and I'll mound it up so it's humped up over the middle a little bit more. And I don't need to come way over the top of this, but I'll probably try to go over the top of these humps here. It should make a really strong mother that what we'll end up probably doing is flipping the whole thing over and taking the back loose. We'll see, but this should, everything goes right, this should lift right off. I'm not gonna cheat it and redo it. You can't redo these things. You do them once and that's what you do. So we're gonna get this set up and get going. It's late in the day. I may put it off to a morning, cover my water, let it cool. It's a little hot coming out of the hose. And then I'll have a cool morning and good time to put this all together. But we've got a lot done today, a lot set up, everything's staged and ready to go, and it should mix up really quick. So, because once it starts, you can't stop till you're finished, and it's easy to spend, 3 to 5 hours just running plaster and cleaning buckets. And when I say 3 to 5 hours, I mean non-stop. You're not going to answer your phone or take a break or go get a drink or anything, because once that plaster is wet, you work until it's finished. So this is looking really good. starting with this a little thin because as soon as I feel it start to kick, I'm going to go over and mix the next batch so I can keep this running. We've got a lot to do in order to get a strong mother. I'll have to start this, and then I'll have to rinse this bucket out really fast as I start the next batch. So this will be ready to follow up again. You got to have your measurement apparatus figured out, so you've got your quantities figured out, so you can just set out multiple batches. Got the next batch ready to mix, but I'll have to start one really fast. And I only need to go up to the top of the silicone. I don't need to go past that in terms of the edges. As you build this, once we get it filled, we can run it kind of wet in the beginning, or fast, early, whatever, to where it floods up to the edge of the rubber. But here later, I want to wait until the plaster's kicked a little longer, because it isn't critical that this is filled completely. I want to capture these cords. I want to capture all of the stuff in the middle and really get these locked in so they should provide support for this mother. Because the goal is to have it stay where I want it to and not break, and so by having thicker plaster, this works better. You'll find that it's more difficult if you try to run this with, you know, like big 5-gallon buckets of plaster. I don't know, it may work for you, but we've always had better success with smaller batches, and where you can really control things. And so that changes your schedule as to how you run the next bucket, but you still have to have everything in place. Still keeping one hand dry, like I like to do, so I've got a dry hand in case I need it. Surprising how often that really helps out. And then I got one hand that I can get wet or dirty or whatever. You can favor one hand over the other. But the goal here is to capture all this support. We could put straps over the middle here if we wanted to. I don't think it'll be necessary. I think it'll be okay. But we'll find out. These large ones are hard to cast. They're expensive to cast. Use probably about 2 bags of hydrocal. And so it won't be cheap. I've already got a whole bunch of silicone in it. And for a one-time use model, that's a lot. But the silicone avoids problems that you run into with waste molds where you only get one chance to do it right. And if something does go wrong, you've got a little opportunity, better opportunity to resolve much it. Ran just over 2 bags of hydrocal, which is a lot. I mean, this is a lot of work for something like this, which is why it normally isn't done. But it's important as a lesson to learn how to do it, because if you're going to do a limited pull, you know, run of, I don't know, half a dozen, 10 of these castings, this is one way you can do it. Now you can use a commercial product like Plaster Paste for the mother. There's all kinds of other products you can use. It really comes down to your budget and what you want to do, how much you want to spend. This much Plaster Paste would cost a lot more than this much hydrocal. I can tell you that for a fact. Unless you got some commercial account where you're buying it by the 55-gallon drum for dirt cheap, you're going to end up spending a lot of money to do something like this with a more convenient product that, you know, may not be something that you have to put an armature in and support it and all that. But you got good reinforcement up and down over the top. Got captured on all the edges. So what we're going to do now is going to just let this set and dry and cure, and probably not touch it for at least 24 hours. And what will, I'm probably going to flip the whole thing over and just lift it off. That's the easiest way to do it without risking breaking this, just in case it's not cured quite enough. But it's important to learn how your plaster runs, what kind of open time you've got. You got to learn how to slip your plaster. This last batch was put on with it a little hard, so I had to go through and put some just started plaster on it in order to help join the two batches. And pretty good. I think this will work out fine. So let's let it set. Do the magic of video. We'll come back and see how it looks. Now it's time to clean up. This is probably not something most people have. I do, so I get to use it. I'm going to flip this over to take it apart just because it's the easier way to do it. The model, the clay doesn't have to be preserved. It mostly will, but all of this is attached from the back of the plywood. So I'm going to pick it up with the crane and flip it over, and that's old man way of doing it. Superman doesn't live here anymore. So instead of hurting my back, I'm just going to do it the easy way. So we'll flip this over and be right back. And there we go. Took about 10 screws out of the back. Flipped it over, took the screws out, and it lifts right off. Now, with a smaller model, smaller clay, smaller mother, it's easier to sort of pry it off and lift it off. But this mother, as much as we put on it, is still kind of fragile. So this shows a little bit of the blocking I put inside here to try to save clay. And now I'll just strip this wood off and evacuate it. And there's old St. Francis. Now, because this is a big mold, I went ahead and flipped over, big model, flipped it over because the mother is the priority to me. I don't want to break it. I don't want to damage it. So we'll put this together. But this is all cleaned up. The silicone's a little dirty because the model was old. The maquette, the actual clay, had sat around for a number of years, so it was pretty dirty. And so the silicone will pick up a lot of that, I don't know, just dirt, whatever it is. But there's a fair amount of, you can see right here, there's part of the dove's head that's a little track. And so we'll have to make sure, may have to put a slit right in there before we cast it to make sure that that doesn't break the dove's head off when we do the positive. But we'll cast this all up. I think I'm going to do a strip of wood through here with a piece across the bottom so that it can be the structural element of this, so that when we move it around, because usually you'll break the bottoms off. This won't be able to move around a lot. We'll put this up on the side in the studio. I'm not going to worry about the whole niche. I want to get out to the edge, and what we'll do is when it's thick, I'll mold it over the sides a little bit and build it, and then just run and cut it to square it up instead of having the deep niche. But the rest of it all came out just great. Cheap silicone from the hardware store. Well, it used to be cheap silicone from the hardware store. So that's what we got. But I'm probably going to wrap this video up. Then we can do the next one with the actual casting. I've got to wash this. I'll just take some dish soap type stuff and clean the silicone really well and make sure all the clay's evacuated, so I can use it again. I'll wedge it back up and throw it in the bucket, and we'll make something else. It'll probably, some of it will turn into this angel. So we'll just use it over and over again. Same thing with my lumber. I'll set stuff aside that's cut to provide the right depth for a 4-inch niche. I'll mark it and put it aside, and then I won't have to buy more of it. And that's about it. So, but that's how we do now. We haven't pulled this off. The easy way to reveal the mother is from down here. We've got all these nice blocks. See, there's one right there, and this will just, we'll carefully pull them to get them popped out and not tear them, and we'll have this fantastic mother here, silicone mold there. When we put this back, these will key right back into there nice and tight. When it lays level, we'll be golden. So that's about it. That's how you do a silicone mold from hardware store plaster, or hardware silicone, and plain old. I use hydrocal. It's a little stronger, but this will be nice and durable now, and we'll get this together and cast a model here shortly, and I'll probably flip it back over with the crane just like I did before. Get our keys back in so he's a nice tight register against the mother. Cast a model just like professionals. Anyways, my name's Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio, teaching you about basic silicone molds. Thanks for stopping by.